So what are some of the significant emblems of Denbigh's history?
Well, Denbigh, we don't know a lot about the history before the castle was built. We think there was a fortress on top of the hill, which was occupied by the Welsh princes. But apart from that, we don't know a lot of detail about what the area was like prior to the castle being built there. We do know that there were lots of woods and forests around, and we know there were lots of fields, and there were lots of animals like hogs and deer and that kind of thing. And a lot of the Welsh people lived in little cottages around the area. But then in 1282, King Edward I decided he was going to invade Wales and get rid of the Welsh princes. So he invaded from England into Wales, and he decided to build castles in different parts of Wales, and he chose Denbigh as one of those places because he felt that it was a way of protecting him from the Welsh people who were living in the Snowdonia and the Gwynedd area of Wales. So that was probably the first most significant thing that we know quite a lot about. And then I suppose the next one was the Civil War in Denbigh, which happened in 1642 and finished in 1646. And one thing we know about that is that King Charles, who was the king at the time, I'm not sure if it's the first or second, I think he was Charles I, he stayed in the castle for 3 days towards the end of the Civil War. But then when he went from here to Chester, he was captured and taken to Scotland. And then Denbigh Castle had never been defeated, so I don't know if you know about the Civil War, but the Civil War was between the parliamentarians and the monarchists, and Denbigh was a monarchist area, and so the castle was being defended for the king, but then he had to admit that they'd lost the Civil War, and then the people in the castle decided that they may as well come out from there, but they were never defeated. So that was very significant as well, because it's probably the only castle in the country that was never defeated. Okay, that's a big thing really for Denbigh, you know. And then I suppose the next one was in the 19th century, which is the 1800s, when the town was declining. It was going down economically because the leather industry, which it depended on, was declining. So they started building all sorts of buildings, like the North Wales Hospital, the mental hospital as they called it. The railway station was built then. Howell School, the private school, was built. And then lots of other buildings were put up, like lots of chapels, lots of schools. So the 19th century was a very busy time in Denbigh for trying to improve the economy of the town.
So what would you say is your favourite piece of Denbigh's history?
Oh, well, that's a difficult one, isn't it? I mean, lots of it is very interesting, but I would have to say that probably the 1950s and 1960s for me, because I was young then, and Denbigh was very different to how it is now. It was very busy. It was a market town, so there were markets on the middle of town every Wednesday. We had the fair, the animal fair, and lots of things were going on. We had The chapels were very busy then, so the Sunday schools were busy, and then there were lots of other events that went on all the time. And I don't know, if you see Denbigh now, there are never a lot of people on town, but in the 1950s and 60s, there would be lots of people around the town and buying things and selling things and using all the facilities in the town.
Are there any dark sides to the history of Denbigh?
When you say dark sides, there were things that happened that weren't very nice. We had, during the 16th century, which was the 1500s, when a guy called Robert Dudley was given the town by Queen Elizabeth I. And he was not a very nice man. And he was always trying to get the residents of Denbigh to give him money to build things and to do things. And he wanted to build a cathedral in Denbigh. Now, I don't know if you've been up to the castle, and have you seen the arches in the castle? Well, those were the arches of what he wanted as a cathedral. But he never managed to finish it because he ran out of money. So that was quite a difficult time, I suppose, for Denbigh, because he was always trying to get more and more money out of people, and they didn't want to give him. The other dark times, really, the times when the town was set on fire in the 1400s. That was when Owen Glyndŵr invaded the town and tried to get it back from the English, but he didn't succeed. But they set fire to the town at that time. Other dark things, there was a time in the 18th century, that's in the 1700s, when the nonconformists or the Methodists started to come to Denbigh to try to convert people from the church to the chapel. And they used to come and stand in the streets or in barns or whatever and preach to the people. But there were lots of local young people who used to disrupt the meetings, and very often they would grab hold of these preachers and take them down to Lenton Pool, where there was a pool of water, and they used to duck them in the water. And so that was quite a difficult time, and the people that did it were taken to court in London, and they were fined heavily for doing it. And so they stopped doing it, and then the preachers carried on coming, and that's when the chapels started to be built in Denbigh, when the Methodists were allowed to come and preach.
And finally, if you could go to any point in Denbigh's history, which point would you go back to?
Another difficult question. I would go back to the 50s and 60s probably. That may be just because I was young then and I'm old now. But it was because it was such an interesting place and there was so much going on here. But apart from that, probably I would go back to the 19th century, which was the time when things were being improved in Denbigh, and all these new buildings were being built. The castle, which had gone into decay and was not used at all, that was being improved so that tourists could come. I'd love to have seen the railway station when that was built, and it was a very important for Denbigh because it brought a lot of people into Denbigh to spend their money. So it's probably between the 1950s and 60s and the 19th century I would go back to.